Hey, welcome to our channel. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss our latest content.
Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe and turn on notifications. It all started with a feeling. The kind that's hard to describe. The kind that shows up in your gut, long before your mind can even put a name to it. A quiet alarm bell ringing in a distant room of your soul. I first noticed something different about Serafina during a random Wednesday dinner. Nothing special about the day. Just a quiet meal after a long week. She was laughing, but not at me. It was a quick, clipped laugh, tied to her phone, like she was in a separate conversation, a world away, right there across the table. I watched from a distance, pretending to be interested in the chicken I was pushing around my plate. But my mind was spinning, asking questions I didn't want the answers to. It was a kind of distraction that didn't match her. Not the woman I married. Serafina. She used to be present, connected, spontaneous. Her laughter used to fill our home. A sound meant for me. Now, it felt stolen. A secret I wasn't in on. Lately, she had become someone else. Always too busy to listen. Always too distracted to look me in the eye. I tried not to pay it much attention. I really did. I chalked it up to work fatigue. The rush of everyday life. Anything easier to swallow than the bitter idea of being sidelined in my own life. But it kept happening. In the weeks that followed, she started coming home later. The excuses were always plausible. Endless meetings, project deadlines, traffic. Plausible, but empty. She began taking more time getting ready in the morning, fussing over her hair with an exaggerated care I hadn't seen in years, testing different shades of lipstick, leaving small red marks on tissues like clues to a crime I couldn't solve. She even changed her perfume, from the light, floral scent I loved, to something heavier, muskier. A scent that didn't feel like her. And I, who knew her details better than anyone, I started feeling like this woman no longer lived in the same world as I did. One night, while she was chopping vegetables in the kitchen, the knife hitting the cutting board with a sharp, rhythmic tap, she mentioned something, casually, like it was just another social event. There's going to be a college reunion this month. She didn't look at me. Her focus was on the onions. The old group is meeting up. After 10 years, I asked if she was excited. Yes, she said, without much enthusiasm in her voice. But the way her eyes lit up, that told a different story. A story she wasn't telling me. That night, she spent hours on the computer, scrolling through old photos. A digital ghost of a life before me. I glimpsed names I'd never heard before. Friends from a chapter I wasn't a part of. One name stuck with me. It flashed on the screen under a picture of a smiling, confident young man with his arm around her. Ronan. In the days that followed, the reunion became the center of Serafina's universe. It was no longer just a casual get-together. It was an event. A production. She bought 2 dresses, unable to decide. She booked a salon appointment, changing her hair color to a slightly richer shade of auburn. She even turned down a dinner with me and 2 other couples, our friends. She said she was too busy getting ready. Too busy. Half out of politeness, half out of a desperate need to feel included in her life again. I asked her, "Do you want me to go with you?" The answer came with a smile. A cutting smile. The kind that looks polite on the surface but is sharpened with dismissal. "Oh, Gideon, it's just college people. You'd feel out of place." That hurt. It wasn't so much the words. It was the way she said them. The way she dismissed me, like my presence would only get in the way. An inconvenience. An anchor holding her back from something she was sailing towards. I didn't argue. I kept it all in. Every word. Every gesture. I just nodded. Okay. Have fun. And in that moment, an idea took shape in the dark corners of my mind. A cold, ugly idea. Maybe she already had someone in mind to go with her. When the reunion day finally came, Serafina walked down the stairs like she was stepping onto a stage. Her tight blue dress hugged her body in a way that was provocative. Her wavy hair fell perfectly over her shoulders. Her high heels made a sharp, decisive click on the hardwood floors, almost making her stumble. She hadn't dressed like that since when? I tried to recall, but the memory wouldn't come. I realized it had been too long. She was beautiful, sure, but it felt like a beauty meant for someone else's eyes. A performance for a different audience. I took a chance. A final attempt to connect. "You look amazing," she just replied with a cold, mechanical, "Thanks," not really looking at me. Her eyes were on her reflection in the hallway mirror. She adjusted an earring, grabbed her purse from the table. She moved like she was late for something far more important than her own husband. I stood there, frozen, like I had just witnessed my own exclusion from my own life. Serafina had said it was a simple, casual event, but it seemed like she was heading to something that could change her whole life. I pressed her one last time. My voice was quiet. "Are you sure you want to go alone?" She hesitated, just for a second, a flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt? Annoyance? Then it was gone. "Yes," she said, her voice firm again. "You'd be bored." The door shut behind her, and the silence in the room seemed to mock me. It was loud, deafening. The air felt heavy, suffocating. My doubts, they turned into certainties in mere seconds. I took a deep breath. I grabbed my keys, my jacket, and I headed out a few minutes later. I had an address to follow, and an intuition too loud to ignore. I knew there was something behind her refusal to let me come. That night wasn't just a meeting between old classmates. I felt it too strongly to dismiss. So when I left the house, driving in silence, no music, no radio, without a clear destination besides following Serafina, I wasn't just tailing my wife. I was following the hunch of a man who knew the patterns of someone he'd watched change right before his very eyes. I had no plan, just the need to see with my own eyes what my heart had already started to accept. I followed her from a safe distance. She didn't drive to the bustling downtown area where most event venues were. She drove to a quieter part of town, and she parked across the street from a bar I recognized. It was discreet, tucked away on a corner, with dim lighting and a reserved vibe, a place that seemed perfect for meetups that don't ask for witnesses. When I saw Serafina step out of her car and cross the street, her walk didn't match someone heading out to see old friends. She didn't look relaxed or nostalgic. She walked like she was anticipating something. Her eyes were searching, urgently. Then, she stopped, and a man appeared right after. He was tall, confident posture, a well-groomed beard, an expression that combined intimacy with longing. Ronan. The way they greeted each other left no doubt. There wasn't a respectful distance. There wasn't a brief, polite hug between old acquaintances. No. He pulled her in, firmly, and she let him do it, with an ease that spoke of familiarity. They stayed close for a while, his hand on the small of her back, like they were picking up right where they left off. I felt my chest tighten, a physical ache. But I didn't look away. I had to see it through. The two of them sat by the bar, near a window. I had a clear, unobstructed view from my car. Serafina slipped off her coat, ran her fingers through her new, auburn hair. She laughed with her gaze down, a shy, practiced gesture. She was flirting. No disguise, no guilt. Everything about it felt orchestrated, like this moment had been planned out through messages, through secret arrangements. For a few minutes, I was transfixed, watching every gesture that used to be mine, now being offered to another man like they were brand new. The way she touched his arm when she laughed, the way she leaned in to hear him better over the low hum of the bar, the way she tucked a lock of hair behind her ear, little details that spoke louder than any confession. I pulled my phone from my pocket. My hands, surprisingly, were steady. I opened the camera, and with a cold precision I didn't know I possessed, I took a series of photos, one after another, in silence. The only sound was the faint click of the digital shutter. I was collecting evidence, not just of betrayal, but of the truth I had been denying to myself for months. After more than an hour of conversation that looked far too intimate, they got up and left the bar. I started my car, the engine turning over quietly. I followed at a distance. They didn't go far. They stopped in a back parking lot, an empty, forgotten space behind a row of closed businesses. I turned off my headlights, and I watched from afar, hidden behind a large truck. And there, under the flickering, sickly yellow light of a lone street lamp, I witnessed the scene that erased all doubt, all hope, all of us. Ronan pulled her in once more. She went without hesitation, and then they kissed. It was a long, calm kiss, full of familiarity, like it wasn't the first time, like it had already become part of their routine. It was too comfortable to be accidental, too intimate to be recent. I raised my phone again. I captured the kiss. More photos, more proof, but most of all, more clarity. The pain that could have exploded into despair, it turned into an odd calm. A strange peace. It was the kind of peace that comes only when there's no more doubt, no more questions, no more what-ifs. I wasn't imagining things. It wasn't insecurity. It wasn't jealousy. It was reality, laid bare, just a few feet away from me. When they both got into Ronan's car and disappeared down the avenue, I stayed for a moment, breathing slowly, still holding my phone. The saved images on the screen looked surreal, but also, as obvious as the past few months had been. I drove home slowly. The engine's hum filled the silence where our conversations used to be. My gaze was lost in thought. Everything was rearranging in my mind. Click, click, click. The pieces were finally falling into place. The excuses about working late, the last-minute dinners, the hidden messages on her phone. It all made sense now. Every one of Serafina's actions had been part of something planned, a betrayal that began long before that reunion. She'd been drifting from me for quite a while. The kiss just confirmed what I already felt inside. Serafina had made a choice. She just forgot to tell her husband, the one who was still living under the same roof. The next morning, Serafina walked through the door. She was carrying her shoes in one hand, her hair down, her face visibly tired. She tossed the keys on the counter with a clatter, and she crossed the living room as though she'd come back from a perfectly normal night out with old friends. I watched her from the top of the stairs. Silent. Still. It was like watching a movie where you already know the ending. She acted like nothing had changed, like I wasn't aware of anything. And that, more than the betrayal itself, was what sealed the end for me. The relaxed way she moved around showed a blind confidence, a belief that she still controlled the situation. It was as if I was too predictable, too restrained to ever challenge her. She still believed she could steer whatever was coming next. She had no idea I was already in a different car, driving down a different road. Over the following days, I kept my usual routine on the outside, but on the inside, I acted strategically. I became an architect of my own departure. I started clearing out my closet, bit by bit, a few shirts one day, a pair of pants the next, leaving only the essentials. I made copies of important documents, bank statements, titles. I scanned personal records, old letters, photos of my family, saving everything to a hard drive she would never find. I did everything carefully, methodically. The goal was to leave without a trace, without her noticing until it was too late. I hired a lawyer, a woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense voice. I showed her the photos. She didn't flinch. She just nodded. We filed for divorce based on the evidence I had gathered. Images that spoke louder than any testimony. Photos that said what Serafina would never admit. At the same time, I visited small, already furnished apartments. I picked a place far from our neighborhood, on the other side of the city, on a street she'd never go down by chance. A clean break. Serafina, meanwhile, went on as if nothing had changed. She still talked on the phone in our bedroom with the door almost shut, her voice a low murmur. She still left for work dinners, coming back smelling of pricey drinks and that sweet, heavy perfume that wasn't mine. I watched it all with a cool detachment. The pain was still there, but it was now a fuel, a cold, efficient energy. She believed I was still clueless, and that was all I needed to finish what I'd started. One evening, I waited for the right moment. Serafina was on the couch, a glass of wine in her hand, laughing at something on her phone. That same secret laugh. During a lull in the silence, I casually mentioned it. My voice was calm, conversational. You know, I thought I saw someone who looked like Ronan the other day. From your college pictures. She froze, for just a split second, almost unnoticeable. Her smile tightened. Her fingers gripped the wine glass a little harder. Then, she tried to sound unbothered. She took a slow sip of wine. Oh, really? It's been so long, I barely remember what he looks like. A blatant lie, delivered with a practiced ease. That was all I needed. I saw her effort to appear natural, the way she tried to dodge the topic, like she was hiding her guilt behind the excuse of time. I didn't call her out on it. That wasn't part of the plan. I switched subjects. I smiled. I let her think she'd gotten off the hook again. I let her believe she was still in control. The next weekend, she told me she was going out shopping with a friend. It was the perfect opportunity. I finished packing. I closed suitcases filled with clothes and sentimental items. Old photos of my parents, saved letters from my grandfather, memories that still connected me to who I once was. Before all of this, I left the rest, the furniture we picked out together, the art on the walls, the life we built. The house was just a shell now, an empty space hung with faded memories. Before leaving, I walked into the kitchen. I placed something symbolic on the cool granite counter, my wedding band, right next to a half-empty glass of wine she had left there. That was my answer, my closing statement. No words. No fights. No screaming matches. A silent declaration from someone who refused to beg for respect. When she got home and saw it, she would understand. Or maybe she wouldn't. Not at first. But the truth would settle in. The house would still stand, but her husband wouldn't be there. The drawers would still be neat, the furniture in its place. But where our partnership once existed, there would now be absence. I walked out the front door for the last time, my head held high. I was certain I wasn't running away. I was simply ending a chapter she herself had destroyed. And for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't look back. I can only imagine her return. It must have been late afternoon, the sun casting long shadows through the windows. She'd be juggling shopping bags, scrolling through her phone, probably smiling at some text, turning the key in the lock with her usual confidence. But something would have felt off immediately. The silence. It would have been different. Not the peaceful silence of an empty house waiting for someone to come home, but the dead silence of a place that has been abandoned. The lights were off. The house lacked any sign of life. She would have called my name, Gideon, but her voice would just echo back at her. I picture her dropping the bags on the couch, taking a good look around. The side table where I kept my books, empty. The picture frame of the two of us from our wedding, gone. The closet door in the bedroom, slightly open. Inside, a vast, empty space where my clothes used to be. My favorite sneakers, gone. She would have gone room to room, her pace quickening, a knot of panic tightening in her stomach, searching for anything that could explain it all. She would have found nothing. No note, no angry letter, no explanation. And then, in the kitchen, on the marble counter, she would have seen it, a half-finished glass of wine, and next to it, gleaming under the kitchen light, my wedding ring. The silence would have spoken louder than any shout ever could. In that simple, cruel detail lay the revenge she never saw coming, an ending without scandal, with no chance for her to defend herself, to lie, to manipulate, a final goodbye, stark and unemotional, fitting for someone who chose to walk away with cold elegance. I imagine her leaning against the wall, sliding to the floor, staying there, motionless, staring into the void she had created herself. That house, where she thought she still called the shots, now belonged only to the echo of loneliness. Her phone would buzz. A group message. Some trivial conversation. She would set it down like it was burning her hand, and in that moment, she would finally understand that the perfect life she thought she had under control had slipped away, entirely by her own doing. That night, she tried calling me, multiple times. My lawyer had advised me to block her number. Every call went straight to voicemail. She reached out to my friends, my family, but I had already spoken to them. Not in detail. I just told them I needed space, that it was over, and asked them to respect my privacy. So they knew nothing, or they pretended not to. I had erased myself from her life with surgical precision, like blotting out a name in a book and rewriting the story from scratch. Across the city, I watched night fall through the window of my new apartment, a small, quiet place where everything was my choice. My furniture, my books, my silence. Sitting with a beer in hand and my feet up on the balcony railing, I reflected on all the time I spent trying to be enough for someone who thought I was too little. He felt relieved to have walked away without begging, to have ended it without giving into the rage that had simmered beneath the surface for so long. She would beg for answers. I wouldn't give her any. Sometimes, the loudest answer is silence. The real punishment is forcing the other person to live with what they destroyed, alone. Serafina spent the following days trying to piece everything together. Her routine became a cycle of ignored messages, unanswered calls, and a growing sense of suffocation in that house, which was now far too big for one person. Over time, reality set in. Financially, we'd been renting, and even though she had a good job, her salary alone couldn't cover all the expenses. The lifestyle she took for granted was a two-person effort. The bills piled up. Things around the house broke down. The spacious couch where we once sat together was now just another reminder that I'd left. And trying to hold on to that space felt like propping up a castle made of wet paper. A few weeks later, the phone rang. It was my lawyer, requesting her presence at the office to sign the final divorce papers. The tone was straightforward, leaving no room for conversation. Serafina refused immediately. She still believed she could turn things around, that she could talk to me, explain, apologize. She tried everything. She wrote long emails that went to a junk folder I never checked. She sent messages with old photos, trying to stir up a nostalgia that no longer existed. She even showed up at the building where I used to work. As a last resort, she went to see my mother, hoping that maybe, just maybe, the woman could convince me to at least listen. But when she arrived, she was greeted by a cold, measured expression. My mother said only a few words. "Gideon told me you might come by. He asked me to give you this." She handed Serafina a simple, white envelope, folded with care. Serafina walked back out to her car with her heart pounding. She sat behind the wheel, her hands shaking as she opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a few words in my handwriting. Please don't look for me anymore. Attached to the back of the letter with a paperclip was the photo, the one from the parking lot, her and Ronan, kissing under the flickering street lamp. Confirmation, proof that I had seen everything, that I knew. It was like a punch to her gut. The air knocked out of her lungs. She covered her face with her hands, and the tears finally came rushing out. I imagined she screamed, alone in her car, as if she could undo time with sheer regret. But in that moment, she finally understood. There was no going back. A few days later, with no other choice, she handed over the keys to the house. The rent was overdue, and she couldn't renegotiate. She left without a fuss, taking only what fit in her trunk. She moved in with her mother, in a far-off neighborhood, in a cramped, modest house where the walls barely blocked the neighbors' noise. Living together was rough, marked by old resentments and unspoken disappointments. Serafina, who always valued having control, now had to share space, ask for help, and listen to advice she didn't want. Her life boiled down to a small room, an old bed, and a memory stuck in her mind. The memory of the man she tossed aside without considering he might just move on without her. And I did move on. No big scene, no explicit payback. My revenge was total absence, the indifference of someone who suffered in silence, but planned things wisely. I never had to raise my voice or explain myself. I did only what was necessary. I vanished from her life, leaving every memory stained by the pain of losing something she could never, ever get back. Now, tell me, if it happened to you, would you have the courage to walk away without shouting? If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.